Hi, everyone. I have some wonderful panelists here. And this is so that you can understand your role as a generator in the world. I love learning about this stuff in a practical way. I'm sure many of you who are tuning in like that too, because you want to know how being a generator works in real life, in business. So I also think this is really cool because then you get to understand your clients. Like you can understand yourself, but if you have a generator client, hopefully this gives you some insight as to how your generator client may be operating because we're all so unique. So let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. Let's go around and I'll just call you out. Diamond, I'll start with you.
Hi, I am Coach Diamond Drip. I am a 5/1 emotional generator, and like Jazz, I am an author. My book came out in September of 2024. It's an anthology. It's called Destiny Expose, the Leading Ladies Edition. And my cross, right? Since we're bringing that in, my incarnation cross is the left angle cross of cycles number 2. So 53 is in the sun, always beginning, always expanding. And that's really what I'm here to do in the world. I'm here to learn more. I'm here to expand. And one of the things about my one line, as we know, the more we research and learn, we just want to share it. And then that sharing of information sparks other catalyst moments for other people to want to dive in deeper. So that is the work that I'm doing right now, and it is amazing.
Yay, that's awesome. Bria, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I will start off with, I'm a 4/1 sacral generator. Yeah, and that was what got me quite interested in human design because like I heard that it's like, 2% that 4/1 is around the world, like it's quite rare. So I think that's the part that it really like made me want to know a lot more about human design. Yeah, what else should I say? I know my incarnation cross is a juxtaposition cross of alertness, which is like seeing, like little things about maybe the past or like patterns or even possibly seeing what could happen in the future. Yeah, so still exploring, quite new to human design, just know about this about maybe a year. Yeah, so I think that's all from me.
That's awesome. Now, are you a coach? Do you work with clients or anything, or is this just personal use for you?
I do have intention to mainly just share about my human design journey first, but I do think that I will want to learn about being a human design reader. For now, I'm just like building my own community and then like sharing what I have learned with people. Yeah, which is basically like utilizing like my profile 4 and 1, like the community part, and also like deep diving into the things, although I'm struggling to like not share too much information.
Yes, right, with your one line too. So we've got a 5/1, a 4/1. That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. Angela, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Angela, and I am a 5/1 sacral generator. My incarnation cross is the left-angled cross of wishes. And I use that energy to work with parents using human design. I say this with my whole heart, that human design saved my family. And so it's been my mission to help parents support their children by also simultaneously supporting themselves. So I'm wishing for a better future using that energy to like create the future children that are here to raise the vibration of the world. So
I love that. Yeah, and they say, right, Ross said human design is for parents to use for their children. How many kids do you have, Angela?
I have one child, but we were also foster parents for a while. I did not know human design when we fostered. It would have been such a different journey if I did. But I have a projector child. And so, you learning about, they always say you parent the way you wish you were parented. And I tried that. But because he's such a different energy type, none of those techniques worked. I mean, he is an emotional projector and we just don't operate the same. So that was like life-changing for us.
Oh, that's so interesting. Diamond, do you have a little one?
I have a 7-year-old manifesting generator, so I resonate deeply.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I have 3. I have a projector daughter who's the oldest, a manifesting generator son who's 3, and then I just had a baby, if you guys know, on my email list. October 1st, I had my manifester. So God, universe, decided to give me all the types, of course, because I'm into human design. I'm like, oh, let's see, and a third line, like, let's see you do this in real life. Let's see you apply it. And my husband's a manifesting generator, and I have 2 reflector dogs. So we got the whole crew. We got everybody.
You just have your whole experiment in your home.
Right? And I'm home all the time with everybody. So I'm like always, yeah, like you get to kind of see the way it works in real life. Ria, do you have any children?
No, not married
Yeah.
yet. So I'm just looking at my partner, my sister, my mother, my friends, all the people that are willing to share their charts with me.
Yeah. Anyone who will listen, right? And when a generator is lit up with human design, it's like try to get us to shut up about it. I remember when I first started, it was like, can I get your birth time? You're like, why? I'm like, I need to tell you about this. This is amazing. All right, let's jump into some questions so people can kind of get an idea of what it's like to be a generator. Okay, so I know from my own experience, it was like pushing, forcing, making things happen, because that's just like generator conditioning 101. Now, can anyone share what their deconditioning journey looked like, shifting from pushing to make things happen to actually responding to opportunities? Does anyone want to go?
I can pop in. So yes, very much so, especially because I started the human design experiment 3 years into my entrepreneur journey. So I had already been pushing and making things happen. And so letting go of that part, just in life culturally, but especially in my business, it was really hard. And in a lot of ways, I'm still deconditioning, as we all are. But one of the biggest things for me was this invitation to get to know myself better. Human design helps us get to know ourselves better, but it also was a push for me to get more familiar with my women's cycles, to start looking at biorhythms now, and to really cultivate an understanding of when am I at my best? When do I make my best decisions? When am I? Because I know a lot of times with the generator slump, right? The plateau, the surge, boom, surge, boom. It can be really helpful to just be in your awareness and know, okay, well, while I'm in this slump, my intellectual is really high. So this is a time for me to learn a lot of things to help me prepare for that next step. So the deconditioning process, it was a fumbly one. I think fumbly is going to be a word that I make up in this moment right now.
We're here for it. We know what you mean.
But it's one that as I rest and settle into it, and I see how many other people have not started their deconditioning process, and I look and I'm like, I'm in flow, and I see them and I'm like, and it's one of those things where, like you said, you're like, do you know your birth time? Because I want to, when I'm flowing, I want you to have that too. Please tell me your birth time. So that's really been a big part of deconditioning, is just getting in my awareness enough so that I know and can prepare for these different things of my design.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
Maybe you can share a short story, which I think, like, pushing things to make it happen, right? Let's just talk about like working. So full-time job, like me applying for jobs, etc. I think that's kind of like pushing to make things happen to me. Yeah, so I did get a job and I did got laid off as well. So I guess it's just things making it work, And then in terms of responding to opportunities, there are like, people coming up to me through LinkedIn, like they send me messages and stuff. And then back then, when I still do not know about human design, I was just like, do I want this? Do I want that? Like there's like this like yes, no decision making, like me responding to all this. And also looking back, I realized like these kind of opportunities that, come and knock at the door for me to like respond yes or no to. Eventually, those that I say yes to are the ones that are really like more aligned. Yeah, and you know, it's like, wow, like how did that even happen, right? Yeah, so that came up to my mind when we were sharing about, like, you know, making things happen and then like responding to opportunities. And that's the job that I have currently as well.
That is, it's really cool that they say, like, generators we're very magnetic, like things come to us and we have to be able to surrender and like allow that to happen. And I know in my own experience as a generator, and I have 4 motors defined. So it's like, I want to push to make things happen. The defined ego, the root, when it's all like going, it's like, I can do this. I know I can. And so I know, if you've listened to my story before, it's like, I've dropped out of a doctorate degree because I was like pushing and forcing. I had 2 kids at home, like newborn, like I did the 2 under 2, just trying to do it all, forcing things to happen, thinking that that was the way I had to live life. And then when I learned human design, and I thought, well, here I am in a shitty job. Well, not shitty. That's probably a mean thing to say if anyone's listening that I work for. I worked for a university, and it was fine because I was allowed to be at home, but I was sitting in meetings I didn't like. That was the shitty part. I was just like doing things that I did not care about. I felt so frustrated, like that generator frustration. I'm like, what is happening? I'm trying to push all these things to happen. And I kept thinking, in a year, I'll be happy. In a year, everything's going to work out. In a year, I'll be graduated and I'll be this and that. And like, realistically, I did not truly on a soul level want any of that. I thought I wanted to be a professor. I thought I wanted to, continue to work for the university because, you get a good job, and it's a good job and money and everything. You can take care of your kids. You can work remotely. And it was just nothing that I wanted, actually. And then when I found human design, I said, I'm going to just go all in on this experiment. And then I wrote everything that frustrated me, because that's the theme, right? Of frustration. I just wrote everything in my life that was like frustrating to do. And what I like, okay, now what do I do with this list? And I started to slowly think about a plan to how to knock this out. So eventually I quit the degree, I quit the job, and I just started focusing on things that lit me up. And it took a couple years too. It's not like instantly things like change in your life. I feel like there's like some healing involved with it too. Trusting yourself, like, oh my gosh, like you're like, should I do this? Should I not? I remember being so scared. So there's a lot of those aspects as well. But then eventually you start responding to all these little opportunities. And then I saw a training to run a summit. And I thought, oh, I think I need to do that. And it's funny, with my emotional wave, I waited a year to actually act on that. Like I did the training, I did the challenge, and I wrote it in my journal that I want to run one. And then a year later, I remember my sacral was like, do it now. Like, this is it. And I'm like, okay, I think I rode the emotional wave long enough. Okay. I think this is actually what's meant to be. And then that's what has led me here. And, same thing with my book, like the opportunities that arise. It's just like getting a publishing deal. It's like, what? It's almost magical. Like you said, Ria, like, it's like, wow, this is at my doorstep and I can respond to it. And it's like, how did I get here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, sorry, that was loud.
Yeah, I wonder, I think the deconditioning process for me personally was really understanding what lit me up, because a lot of the clients that I work with, they like have no idea what brings them joy because they're so conditioned. And I know I was at that point where I'm like, I have no idea what it means to have my cup full and to do something that truly brings me joy. And so that was really instrumental in the deconditioning process for me. And actually it was people going, oh, look how you light up when you talk about human design, your whole energy shifts. And I was like, huh? Like, oh, you know what? It's right. Like, I can go for hours and hours and hours with very little sleep if I'm constantly researching and doing the things that I like when it comes to that. And something that I really like to play with in a game that I do is I will do human design readings or do something that I really love, and then I'll go to a grocery store or a park and watch people just come up to me naturally and initiate conversations because my auric field has gotten so big. It's really fun to play with.
Oh, that is so interesting. That's such a great point, Angela. I just wanted to say, like, finding what actually lights you up and being able to listen to your body is part of the journey as well, right? Connecting back to yourself. As a child, did anyone else have this where like you'd be so excited and like your parents or whoever would just be like, "What is wrong with you? Like, why are you on this? Like, why are you acting this way?" And it's like, when I had an idea, I remember as a kid, my mom would just, I think she's a projector. We don't know her birth time, but anyway, she would just like knock it down. She'd be like, "Why are you still talking?" I'd be like, "Oh, I can't stop talking." And it's because I was so excited. Did anyone else have that?
I feel like I had to have, especially because my daughter has those moments. So I'm like, I feel like I had to have at some point.
Yeah.
I think when you mention like, talking on that aspect, like I think when I enjoy something, I keep talking that people are like, why are you talking so much? When I'm young, I do have like comments telling me like, you're talking a lot, like you're gonna do a good job in some sort of like talking related jobs. That's what I recall people telling me, although the job that I'm doing is not really related to like talking per se.
Yeah. But you were excited about what it is you were talking about.
I don't quite remember though. I think it's just whatever content that the adults were talking about that I enjoy listening to, that I enjoy like, continuing to know more. Then I just continue. I don't know what I'm talking about, honestly. Don't remember.
Yeah. I think some of the conditioning too as a generator, like, well, for me personally, is like when someone just is like, "What are you doing? Why are you acting that way?" It's like doing the deconditioning journey, coming back to yourself is like, it's okay to be excited. It's okay to like follow this feeling instead of shutting down. Like I used to have this terrible I guess habit where when I would get really excited, I would talk and then I would trail off. I'd be like, "Yeah, and and like I wouldn't continue because I think I was so used to like making sure I wasn't too much for anyone who was listening to what I was saying. And I remember once just catching myself doing that, and then I caught myself doing it again and again, and I'm like, wow, I really silenced myself. I just think no one wants, and that's the belief that no one wants to hear what I'm excited about. No one wants to hear about what I'm talking about. And that's how I would get really excited and then dim my excitement.
I just want to say I relate. And I want to say that most likely that was me as a child looking back, because I'm like, I have a completely open throat, which, as we know, when we're kids, we're the most in our, I'm like, yeah, lots of people probably told me to shut up.
And then it like, you internalize it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a terrible thing. But once you know your human design and you know this, you can find your way back. Okay, can you describe a time when you followed your gut response and it led to unexpected success?
Oh my god, I want to share first.
Yeah.
So the following gut response, right? So there was a life coaching course that I did not know about human design back then yet, but then like I knew that I need to go for it. And it was actually quite expensive, but like I knew that I need to go for it. And then I went for that and I felt like a huge shift in my life. I meet like a lot of great people who like they're just great people that are still in my life right now. And there's the change in knowing how to manage my thoughts and leaning towards feeling what's in my body. And that's where I found human design from, actually. So that's why I'm like, I got to share this as the example, because it was just me following my gut feeling, and that brought me to human design and brought me to today. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
The thing I'll share is the book, actually. So the anthology that I am a part of, I have been wanting to add author to coach and speaker some of that was conditioning, right? If you're serious about something, write a book about it. But it was also this desire to become an author and to get what my experience was with human design out to as many people as possible. That's actually the vision statement of my business as of April of 2024. I want to impact 1 million souls with this information. And so an opportunity presented itself for me to be a part of this anthology, and everything, like I've listened to people be a part of anthologies, and I've heard about things getting extended and timelines dragging on, but I still haven't looked up her energy yet because she hasn't told me her time of birth, but I'm pretty sure she's a manifester who was like leading the charge of this and like making sure we were doing deadlines and doing like all of these things. And I think this was the best way that I could have added author to my list of like accomplishments, titles, whatever you want to call it, because there were so many aspects of that process that I would have struggled or maybe given up or what have you. And just to have someone pushing to be around 14 other ladies who are also going through this process, having to meet deadlines, and then the marketing piece. We have been on ABC, forget what the other one was. We've been on a couple different ones. We have articles published in CEO Weekly, Medium. Like there was so much. We had a book launch. Could you imagine like planning your own book launch? Like there were just, and so I want to say that, you know, listening to my authority and like waiting, because there was a point where I would have been like, oh, I want to add an author to my name. So let me just sit down, let me carve out time, let me make this happen, let me write this book. What can I write a book about? And going down that whole rabbit hole. But in having the thought and waiting, especially because I have emotional authority, an opportunity presented itself, and it was the smoothest it's ever probably going to go or could have gone or what have you. And so, yeah, just.
I love hearing stories like that where it just like aligns so perfectly. And that was a good example of like you were about to force things. you were very close to being
So
like, I gotta make this happen, right? And you just waited. I had a question. What is your emotional wave?
The source, whatever the regular, whatever.
Is it the 1222? What does it connect to? Oh no, you have an open throat.
Yeah, right. I'm definitely not the 12.
You're definitely not the 12.
59.6. So yeah.
59.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Oh, that's the source. Yeah, there's like the one that's called the source. Yeah.
She word like my one line for a second was like, did I misremember the source?
No, that was me. I'm like, should have known that, Jazz. You just wrote a freaking book. You just did the emotional wave chart the other day and you don't know what source is. Okay. Like, it's okay. We got an open head over here, everybody. An open head, an open ajna. It'll come to me when it's supposed to. And I know no one's judging me here because it happens to everybody. Well, 70% of the population who has open heads understands what's up. Yeah. Everybody will have an open head here?
Nope.
You're defined?
I have a defined head and a defined ajna.
Oh, awesome. My two kids have defined head and ajnas. And it's so funny when they disagree on things. It's
yeah.
Like, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. Actually, you're wrong. And they're 3 and 5, right? And I'm just watching this happen. And that's like, no one's gonna back down. You guys are just, it's okay. Just, I'm like, you can have your own opinion. You can have your own opinion. Life will still move on about like what color that granola bar was, guys. No one.
I know my son has a defined ajna, and we've just determined like when we communicate, I'm like, you're right. He's like, but, and he tries to continue explaining. I said, you're right. You're right. It's my way to back down because you are right for yourself, and I believe something different, and it's okay. You're right.
I love that. Just to say you're right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm like, I'm confirming you. You don't have to explain anymore. You're right.
I'm going to teach them to say that to each other.
Yeah, you should. You're right.
So then they can back down from each other.
Yes.
Oh my God, this is amazing. See? I love it. I love it. Okay. Yeah. Anybody else when they follow their gut response? Any stories to share?
I'll share my story that moving. So we're originally from Houston, Texas. And then we decided in 2018 we were going to move. My husband got a job opportunity, and it felt like a huge gut response. Like neither one of us ever thought we would leave Texas. Like that was where we were going to raise our child, that we had bought our forever home, all the things. And it felt so right in the moment. And then a couple years into it, it felt so wrong. Like I felt like I had made the hugest mistake of my life because moving here was such a challenge. And now that we're through that, I remind myself of what that felt like, because it was definitely a yes, and I wouldn't be where I am in my journey without following that gut, even though there was a portion where I was like, I don't think I made the right choice. And that comes down to really trusting that feeling that you originally had, because I think we live in a society where it's instant gratification and we expect it to just work out. And going back and questioning, was that a right decision? Yes, it was, because I followed my gut, even though there was a big chunk where it didn't feel right. But we wouldn't be here if we didn't follow that. If that
Right. Yeah. So it's like the experience, like you had to have that experience. That was
Mhm.
part of the learning process.
Right.
And we know like this is like the school of life, right? We have lessons we have to learn, even though, and I think maybe that's like what some people might assume, like with human design, once you align to your design and you follow your strategy and authority, everything's going to be amazing. But it's almost like it can align you to the lessons you need to level up soul wise, right? So thank you. That's actually a great example. Now, how do you guys manage frustration when you're stuck in situations or commitments that don't light you up? Because it's not always gonna light you up.
I think for me, right, I try my best to set healthy boundaries. Keyword healthy boundaries. Yeah, boundaries can be it's something to navigate and explore also, because like when we set boundaries, then we have to see what kind of consequence are we willing to, accept. Yeah, that was a learning process. And then knowing that, some things just wouldn't feel aligned, right? Then I'll just put it aside. Like I could possibly distance myself from things if I feel frustration. Let's just say if I see myself having to surround with certain people for lunch that have many negative conversations, and I don't want to be there. So I distance myself because I feel very frustrated. Like, hi, I just want to have a great lunch. I just want to eat. I don't want to talk about work. So I distance myself. I have my own lunch alone, or I just find someone else with better energy, for instance. Yeah. If I can't do anything about the situation where it's like an obligation, it's something I have to do, right? There's no choice, right? I just learn to manage my thoughts around the situation, because it could be like, let's just say somebody is their words are not very nice, but everything is neutral, you see. So it's a matter of how I'm seeing whatever words that this person have just said to me. Yeah, so I will catch my thoughts and be like, is this serving me? Maybe it's not. Let's just change it a little. But if I realize that I can't change it and I want to keep with that, then I just keep with it. I'm just gonna sit in that frustration and just let it be frustration, like frustrated for as long as I want to before like I move on.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah. So a lot of mindset, and then just like, this is kind of, I have to get through this anyway. And the only thing I can control is how I'm speaking to myself or how I'm speaking about the situation. I definitely can relate to that. And it's like, that's the greatest strength you can have, when you can harness your mindset around things that frustrate you. You're like, I always say, it might be a defined ego thing too, but it's like, if I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, I can get through anything. Like, getting a cavity filled or like whatever. It's like, I can get through anything as long as I know it's going to end in like 30 minutes, an hour, whatever. Give me a time frame and I can manage my thoughts in that frustration. Anybody else?
It's breath for me. Like that's always the first thing that I go to. Like if I notice that I'm feeling frustrated, if I notice that tension like building up back here, I'm like, okay, breathe. Because I realized because I microdose with psilocybin as well. And I realized one day that I was forgetting to breathe. Like in the midst of being stressed, in the midst of heated conversations, I was forgetting to breathe, and giving myself that ability to create that space in myself. And a lot of times the inner critic is always going. And so we're not even necessarily paying attention to the things that it's saying to us that like frustrate us. And so it just gives you that moment to, like you said, reset the brain, reset the nervous system, reset everything, and really look at things from a fresher perspective. When it comes to commitments that we're in, mindset, again, like Rhea was saying, and like you were saying, Jazz, is like so important, simply because I'm in a commitment right now. I was in my not self a little bit toward the end of April, May-ish, and I was in the experience, things are going well, but then I started to question myself, and I decided to join a year-long coaching program after I told myself I wasn't going to do that again. And like halfway through, I noticed, I was like, you shouldn't have did this. Why did you do this? Because now you go to this meeting every 2 weeks. And so the mindset shift was, okay, you're a generator. So what this is going to do every 2 weeks is it's going to give you something to respond to every 2 weeks. And because there was at one point during the program where he was having us post like 3 times a day, sometimes 12 times. And there were people stressing about how am I gonna, and I was like, you know what? Response. I don't want to post 3 times a day. I definitely don't want to post 12. So I'm going to post what feels right for me and move forward. And so that's just how breath and mindset are my 2 things.
Yeah. And what I hear when you say that is like trusting yourself. Angela, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think as a generator, and then when you feel that frustration, what I've learned is I sit in it for a while. That sacred pause between action has become really important for me. Like, again, mindset, right? Like, what is this trying to teach me? Because I believe everything is a lesson. There's something to learn from everything that we do, whether we commit out of alignment. When we're out of alignment, we're in alignment. What are we learning from this situation? And when you're in that place of frustration, it's so easy to continue to feed that. Like, I've screwed up. This is not working. Why did I do that? Really sitting in that frustration instead of being like, okay, this is my tell that something's not right. Okay, what am I learning from this so that we can find that flow again, to find that satisfaction again. And then, of course, our life cannot be 100% roses all the time, right? But like finding the little spark of joy, like cleaning your house. Like most people don't want to do that, but it's something that has to be done. So I dance while I do it because that brings me joy, and then it gets done, right? So even finding the little bit of joy that will spark that satisfaction in you can be so helpful, I believe, in like moving through it and kind of staying in the joy when you still have things that are not necessarily what you want to do with your time.
Yes, that's so practical. I love that. With my experience with frustration, I realized I had to ask myself, how often was I trying to control something? So that forcing. I remember just hearing everyone's examples here, and thinking of my own is like, when I'm in frustration, I do have to look at, okay, what am I trying to control right now? And why am I like trying to force things to happen a certain way? Like I have this idea of the way it should be going and it's not going that way. And now I'm frustrated. So I had to look at my relationship with wanting to always control. Okay. Now I want to know what everyone's sacral energy kind of feels like for them, and how you kind of stay attuned to your sacral energy.
I'll go on that one. That has been the biggest challenge, learning what my sacral feels like, because it doesn't feel like what's been described to feel as like that natural instinctual grunting. Like mine typically feels like that urge when you're about to cry is how mine shows up. But it's been interesting trying to connect with that because my whole spleen is lit up, like all the gates are lit up in my spleen. So my spleen is very, very loud.
Is it defined then?
It is defined, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my spleen is super loud. So that's interesting to navigate, like understanding that internal knowing and working with that also with what my sacral should sound like. But I found that it typically shows up as a sense of wanting to cry instead of a physical sensation or that grunting, like, which has been interesting for me because I've talked to other clients and some of them have had similar response in that they don't feel that what it's described as. They feel it more of a sensation, like a pushing or an emotional sensation, even though I'm not emotionally defined. So it's interesting.
That is interesting. Anybody else?
I have emotional definition, and I love this question because I spent so much time trying to get to know the emotional part because I was like, this is the problem, obviously. Like, as a generator, this is the thing that I'm going to run up against right here. So I only recently started getting back in touch with the sacral part of it so that I can then wait out my emotional way from that point. But for me, it's really how it's described for me is like, ooh, yes, I want to do something, or like, not really. And the example that I give is I was just recently presented with an opportunity to go to Tanzania for like a week for a retreat. And I love the person. I didn't really know much about Tanzania, so I had to look into it. It seemed cool enough, but that, ooh, that I want to, like, really, yes. And so I literally, thankfully, she's into human design as well. She's a projector. I was like, hey, thank you for these emails. Thank you for this opportunity, but I'm just not cultivating that, ooh, hell yes for this. But I'm super excited to hear all about when you go, to see the pictures, but I hope you can understand. And she did. It was totally no problem. So it's really, I think for me, the more important thing is paying attention to those ooh yeses, because there have been so many times where that hesitation or that no got overridden throughout the wave or whatever. So I think for me, it's really paying attention to those ooh, hell yes feelings.
Yes. Oh yeah, with the emotional wave for sure.
Yep.
It's like you can get super like, ooh, yeah. And then you ride the wave and it's like, actually, that's a no. And
Yeah.
that's why it's so important to ride that wave. Rhea, anything for you?
I think I generally, okay, if I put it two ways, like a yes and a no, right? If it's a like super hell yes, right? It feels like all the cells in my body are like dancing, like jumping. They are like jumping. And then I'm like, okay, enough of jumping. I got it. When if it's a yes. If not, when it's a no, right? It feels like the stomach is like kind of like in this manner. You can feel your stomach in this manner. Then you're like, okay, that's a no. Go and listen to your body. And I also try experimenting both sides as well. So like there are things that come up that I respond to them like, it's a no, but I'm just gonna try it anyway. Like I just gonna try it anyway, and it really proved to me that hey, it's really a no. I don't know. I just have to like try and like prove myself wrong, kind of like hey, you didn't listen to that. It's like the mind also, cause like like psychology, like like I don't know, certain prices, right? Like whoa, it's so good. It's the value is so good, right? And I'm like, I should just sign up for it. And then like I pay, then I buy, then I have no time. Then after I don't feel aligned to listen to it at all. And I'm like, I should just listen to it like, hey, but then mine, I take it as a lesson to remind myself that hey, we can trust your gut, like just trust it.
Yeah. It sounds very third line of you. I know you're a 4-1, but that sounds very third line. Well, I know I shouldn't do it, but I'm going to do it and see what happens anyway. Oh, that's so funny. I think for me, mine feels like just like excitement. I remember reading a book and it was about abundance. And then I remember thinking, oh, I want to do a money mindset course on EFT. And when I read like one line of the book, my whole, like, I just got so excited. It was like in my sacral, but it was almost like if you were like to squeal, like, like that. I don't know if anyone's going to see this video. It might just be audio. Okay. So you're just going to have to listen to it. I am making some gestures. But anyway, so I'm like saying E and super, like that's what it feels like, super excited inside of me. But there have been times where you don't ride the emotional wave. And that excitement, that E is like, oh my God, why did I decide to do this? Going back to what I was saying, creating that course, I remember I just whipped it up so quickly. The energy behind it, once your sacral's behind it, once you even rode that emotional wave, when it's aligned, I felt like it was just, I knew what to do. I knew what I wanted to say. I knew how I wanted to create it. And it was created very quickly. So that's really cool when your energy gets behind it. And I think that's the cool thing about human design and following your strategy and authority. When things, Diamond, like you were saying with your book, it just unfolds and you're like, oh, okay, all right, I have it in me. Okay, let's see here. What are some other cool questions to ask? I have a list of questions. I doubt we're going to get through them all, like I said. Okay, let's see. What limiting beliefs did you guys encounter during your deconditioning journey, and how did you overcome them? Anyone want to go? Or I can start. I have one that I used to, it was like always feeling like I had to do everything. Like, you know how they say generators have a hard time saying no, setting boundaries. And I remember repeating back to myself, I guess it's not the limiting belief, it's like the positive affirmation that I had to like ingrain in my brain. It was like, just because I can do it doesn't mean I should. Because I would just say yes to everything. People needed something from me. If they needed help, whatever, I was like, sure, yeah. And that was just not good for a generator when, like, if your energy isn't behind it and your excitement isn't behind it, it's like womp, womp, womp. And I always think for the other person on the other side, when I agree to those things, like, I wonder how they perceive me. Because I know how I am when I'm super excited about things in my energy. Like Angela, you were saying, when your aura is just like big and people can like feel that and are attracted and magnetized to it. I just wonder, like, when I would say yes to these things and I, show up and it's like, what's wrong with you? You're like, I'm fine. This is great. I'm so happy to be here. And you're like, oh, why? So that was like a mantra for me when I started the deconditioning journey. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Anybody else?
I love that. One of my mentors actually, she said that, and I was like, this is something I have to take with me. I have one question I did want to ask, Jess. Do you have the 29?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
I have a triple split though.
Okay.
If anyone's wondering definition, and just like yapping away, talking in circles, repeating myself. I'm sorry, everybody.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Clarity moment. My daughter's also triple split manifesting. So thank you for that just now.
Yeah. The yapper.
I have single definition. And so what comes with that, obviously, is all of my openness, but especially my heart center, the ego heart center, thinking I have something to prove. And so that's been one of my biggest things to like let go, is settling into the knowing that I have nothing to prove, the knowing that I don't have to push myself through things, even when it comes to arguably my second most like annoying center, the open ajna. Ooh, I don't know though. The open throat. I don't know. The ajna of like, oh, okay, yes, because the one line, the ajna of like wanting to convince everyone that I'm certain. Oh my gosh, to release that, to even, especially with stuff like human design, because with, like you were saying, and I related so much to that, when we're lit up about something, all I wanted to talk about for the beginning of last year was human design, because I discovered it in November of 23. All I wanted to, I was like, do you know your time of birth? Can you find it? Can you like text your mom? And there would be questions that people would ask, and I would feel like this pressure to like go and research so I could have an answer for in case somebody else. And there are so many things in human design. When I finally settled into the fact that I get to research and go down rabbit hole things about things that I'm actually excited about, And if someone asks me a question, to just have the relief of the feeling of saying, I don't know that, but here's a resource that you can go and check it out and read more about that. It was so liberating.
Yes. Yeah, especially as a one line, I can imagine where you feel like, no, oh no, now I need to read another book about that because someone asked me a question about that. And yeah, I feel like, I resonate a lot with the one line because of my 48. I have the channel to 1648,
Yeah.
where it's like, I just need to know everything. Like they call it the librarian, the gate 48, and I have books. And it's like, do you want to get rid of any of your books? Like, what if I need one fact from this book that I've highlighted and I have like 150 books about the same topic? It's like, but this one line, I don't know. I might need it sometime. It's just, it's wild, isn't it? So I'm glad you're able to release that need to be certain and everything. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to add on to that because it seems like whatever she's sharing, I can relate in terms of like the line one. And that's what I wrote down when the questions came up also. Like I wrote like the limiting belief part, right? It's like I felt like I'm not knowledgeable enough to guide or teach people. But then the comforting thought that I tell myself is always like, there's always someone who is like kind of like the previous me of me who's keen to learn from me. Yeah, that's a comforting thought that I kind of like tell myself, because it's okay not to know everything. just be honest about that I'm still starting, and like I'm navigating along the way. Like, hey, these are the resources I use, but somehow they just, I don't know why, but it seems like those people just do not seem as keen to go deep dive themselves, but want the answer from me. Like, okay, I'm not sure if Diamond is feeling similar ways, but it seems like when people ask me question, right, like kind of like want to see how I break it down rather than them finding it themselves. So far, like just what I observe about people so far. Yeah, also like I think as my profile shows also, I like to like kind of look at humans' behavior. So like it's very fascinating to see how they react or what kind of questions they ask. Yeah.
One lines.
Yeah. Everybody here is a one line, well, except me, but yeah, panelists here are all one line.
Something to share about that also.
But also what comes with that is recognizing that, like you said, not everyone is a one line. Like my partner's a 4'6", my daughter's a 5. My daughter was the most, because I'm a 5'1", she's a 5'2". I'm like, why don't you want to know more about this? Like, why? And recognizing like not everyone does the in-depth analysis and research that we do.
And I think as a generator too, like what you're excited about and what you've researched about, like not everyone's down for that. Like not everyone's like, what are you so excited about? They're like, they just don't understand that excitement that comes from a generator sharing what they need to with the world. Like it's just not their people, right?
And I think probably, Diamond, with your open throat, I also have an open throat. So like understanding that not everybody's going to hear you unless they ask, right? That's been, I mean, it's not generator specific, but that's been something that I've had to learn. Like, just because I'm excited about something, until someone asks me about it, they're not going to hear what I have to say.
Yeah.
And having a child that has a defined throat, he is always going to be louder and more heard than I am. So learning to operate with that, it's been interesting. And my spouse has an open throat and an open G center. And like, that's one of his triggers, is like, nobody hears me. I'm like, because you're always trying to fill the void. Stop talking. Like, stop talking, like literally. But it's been interesting. And then you talk about the 48. I have the 48 in my unconscious Mars. And so from a gene keys perspective, that's my core wound. And when I discovered that, I was like, oh my God, no wonder I have always felt less than everybody. I've always felt like I'm not smart enough. I didn't go to college, so no one's going to listen to me. I have to get all the certifications to prove my worth. And I was like, oh no, like I have all that knowledge in me, and it'll show up whenever it's time and ready to be shared. But that was like a huge aha moment for me in the whole process of human design. It was like, Oh, now I see why I feel less than for so long. And all these different events in my life who kept reiterating that you're not smart enough, you're not going to amount to anything, and really moving through the shadow of that and really dipping into the well that you have all this knowledge when you need to know it, right? And the line one, if I need to know it, I will fall down a rabbit hole and gobble up all that information, you know?
Yeah. I think what I love most about the one line is that they have done the research for you. So what you're bringing to the table is like what you need to know, because they've already flushed through all the other stuff. And that's why we need the one line.
But
Like
also
truly.
also
Where-
provided it's things that we're excited about. I think that's an interesting thing that I observe also. If it's not something I'm excited about, don't expect me to like go deep dive into like, you know, the details of things. I wanted to share something because Angela was sharing that she have a was it open or defined throat?
Open throat.
Undefined throat. Yeah. Open throat.
Open throat, and your kid has a defined throat, correct? Myself, for mine is I have an open throat, and I observed that my mom have a defined throat, and I felt that I'm trying to like figure out the dynamics of it. I was just like, it was kind of like flip,
Yeah. Yeah.
I always felt like my mom isn't listening to me. Like, hi, why? Then I went to look at her chart. I'm like, there must be a reason why.
That's so interesting. That it's good for me to keep in mind too with talking about the open throats. It sounds everyone's undefined or open. I'm defined. But my daughter is open and she's a projector too, to feel seen and heard and to be a little more mindful of that. Just as a mom.
Yeah. And it's interesting for me and my son, we complete the alpha channel for each other. So when I'm with him, I have a defined throat. So I have to be really conscious when interacting with him because I now have this energy that's easily flowing for me. And I have to stop and be like, okay, I'm going to listen more and talk less just because I have that access to that energy when we're with one another. And so him being a projector, I can be louder and more dominating than him when we interact with one another just because of that definition there. So it's been interesting to navigate that.
Oh, that is interesting. So cool to see again, like in real life, how these connections show up and how it plays out in real life. Okay. Anyone want to add to that or next question? We good? Yeah. Okay. Okay. How has learning to embody your human design type influence your confidence or authenticity? I put as a coach, but like just in general, how has it supported you in your confidence?
I'll hop in. So at the time that I discovered human design, I was in a year-long business coaching program, which was making me feel like I wasn't enough. I then decided to get a sales coach specifically because I was like, obviously sales is where I'm struggling. And that showed me things as well. And so then I was like, okay, I'm right, Taylor Swift. I'm the problem, it's me. So I got a life coach. And I was like, okay, maybe I need to rework the stories that I'm telling myself. And it was like 4 months into doing that work that I realized how much I didn't trust myself, how much I was struggling with being certain and wanting these metrics that culturally was in my environment. And when I found human design and it felt like I was coming home to myself, all of the things that I would question about myself, like when I first began the experiment, I guess in typical one line, I went a lot further than what I probably was going to. But when I discovered it, I was like, this is me, but this is also everything that I'm not. And so that, especially because I was already in the place of I'm the problem, it's me, I went super hard at looking at all the gates I don't have, all of the energy centers, like, why is this such a problem for me? And then when that got overwhelming, gate of extremes, right? When that got overwhelming, I was like, well, why don't I start looking at the stuff that I do have? And it was like, that was a much easier process. And then in that process, I learned that if we don't have something, it's because our soul decided that it didn't need it in this lifetime. And that was so affirming for me, because there were so many things that I felt like I didn't have. And I was like, why don't I have this? Like, it seems like people who have this are so much further along or whatever. And to just rest into, no, look at your gifts and look at them deeply and figure out how can you get more into alignment. And I love that Angela brought up Gene Keys, because that was another thing that I had to come back to during this time. I first learned about Gene Keys like a month into human design. And because it wasn't so practical, I was like, wait, no. How do I go from immaturity to superabundance? What are the steps? Like, how do we get here? And when I couldn't find like a straight solution, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go back to human design. And then when I was in this contemplation of like contemplating the gifts that I have and looking at the shadows, is like everything really started to make sense. And so I think that it's really helped with confidence, because now things that I once felt bad about or I was ashamed about, like they're now things that I stepped into. I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 when I was 14, which made me for a good part of my life see my emotions as something that was bad, something that I needed to fix. And then coming into human design, I have emotional authority. I get to look at my feelings as evidence. So just little things like that just have so helped. Even we talked a lot about the one line, right? Knowing that by default, I'm going to feel like I don't know enough gives me even more permission to say, hey, you do know enough. And especially because there's that like saying out there, you don't have to know everything. You just have to know 10% more than the person that you're helping. Like, it helped affirm that even more. So those are just a few.
I loved all of that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing. Yeah, the whole stepping into human design giving you permission to be yourself, but then the way you said it's easy to focus on what you don't have, right? And I think a lot of us can relate to that when we look at our chart and you're like, oh, why don't I have that? I wish I had that. Why does this person have that? They seem like they have it all together. And I think it's really important to look at what you do have and how to decondition the stories of your openness, your undefined centers.
Yeah. I think that similar to you, Diamond, I didn't go into the openness as much, but I did go into the shadows of everything, and I got stuck. Like I said, my spleen is completely lit up. I have all of the gates except for 18 lit up in my spleen. And so I was like, oh, no wonder I suffer from anxiety, and I'm like scared of everything. And I'm like, how do I get rid of my shadow? How do I get rid of this? And my mentor was like, you can't get rid of the shadow. Like, you're going to bounce between them and you'll spend less time in them as you grow. And then, especially when I pulled my son's chart, I'm like, oh my God, he's got all these things. He's got the perfectionist. He's got an open spleen. He's going to be an addict, like all these negative things. And I was like, oh my God, how do I make it stop? Right. And I was so stuck in the shadow. And then when I started to really embrace the gifts of every single gate that we had, like that I had, I was like, oh, like look at the beauty in each of these instead of the heaviness, because we're going to move through that. And I always say, like, I've survived 100% up to this point, so I'm going to keep surviving, right? And so instead of getting stuck in that, and then really being able to see the gifts in all those channels and gates helped me really stand in my confidence and knowing like, oh, okay, so yes, I do have the fears of having all those splenic gates, but guess what? You have that internal knowing if you just listen, because it's quiet and it's going to be there and you're going to have it. And so when I started this whole coaching journey, I was like, I have to know all the information. I can't share unless I have all the information, like really into that line 1. But then I was like, you know what? I don't have to like have all the answers, because I have that spleen definition and it's going to show up when I need it. And that open throat's going to be able to tell them what they need to hear when they need to hear it. And I just need to trust. And really just trusting, because you don't want to get it wrong. I can't get it wrong. I'll screw up their whole life if I get it wrong. All right. But really leaning into that trust, like, and it's so scary because there's nothing tangible with it. Like, it's just, you just have to trust yourself. But man, it pays off when you do it.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Thank you. That's awesome. Now, what advice would you guys give someone who's a generator? So, maybe just learning about their human design. What advice would you give to a generator starting their deconditioning journey?
I think I mean, people that I'm introducing human design to, especially, I think what I've been telling them is to observe their satisfaction and frustration, because that's like a bit easier to digest. And also, just generally, I ask them to not look into the details of things, because human design is so complicated, and you might get to, like earlier what you were sharing, right? Like when we look into the not so good side of things, and then we might get to confused or even see it as a bad thing that knowing this thing actually might disempower us. Yeah, so generally I ask people, like, to observe and see what brings them satisfaction, what brings them frustration, and kind of like lean towards answering yes no question. Even simple things like, what food do I want to eat today, right? Now I just look around at the food and like, yes or no, yes or no, like the simple little actions, and just try to embody it from small decisions, slowly building up to the bigger ones.
Oh, that's great advice.
Mhm.
Awesome. Anybody else?
I think first trying things to see what lights them up. Because, like I said previously, I find that so many generator types have no idea what lights them up because we've just been taught to work and sleep and do and not really fill our cups. So I think that that is super important if you're starting the journey, just to figure out what it is that really brings you joy, and that you're going to have to just try things to see what does that for you. Is really important. And also be an advocate for yourself. Like, something I've had to learn is I need you to present that to me in a yes or no question so that I can respond and not feel like I'm deflated or like I don't know the answer. Like, that's what we've learned. We've learned to communicate with my son. He'll ask me open-ended questions. I'm like, I need that in a yes or no question for me to respond to you so that I can tap into that. And then I'm not like, I don't know, and living in a whole bunch of world of I don't know because it wasn't presented to me in the proper way.
Oh
Ooh,
my
I
God,
like
can I
that.
just add that? Sorry. So she was saying about the word I don't know, right? That was something that I keep saying when I'm young. And I feel very invalidated when like people like, don't say I don't know. You need to have an answer. Like that's not good and stuff. But like perhaps the questions are just not that ideal for us. Yeah. So I think like what she's doing is really good in terms of especially parents trying to learn about, the kids, right? Like
Yeah.
what type are they? So that they are a generator, you try to give them questions that let them empower them to say yes or no. And that's like really good for generator especially.
Yeah.
I love that.
I just want to pop in with, I actually just made a video about this, so I love this question. Not enough people, I feel like, talk about the stair step that we go through as generators. So I just want to give that little heads up. So as generators, we have that initial surge to mastery, and then we hit this plateau. And the thing that I want to emphasize to our generators when you're in that plateau is to get really familiar with your ego versus your higher self, your intuition, your awareness. Because a lot of times the pressure will come from the ego that's operating off of all of the conditioned beliefs and things like, you have to do something, you got to take this course, you got to do this other thing. Whereas when something's in alignment, there's this peace that comes with it. There's like a, ooh, there's like an aha, there's like this light bulb that kind of comes through. And so getting really into what's pressure and what's alignment and what that feels like, especially during the stair step, because you never know, that surge, it might just be around the corner. You just gotta be patient in the pressure.
Yes. Yeah, that plateau. And that's where you can like, all right, this isn't for me anymore. And you just like jump off and you quit and you burn everything down. And like you said, right around the corner if you just rested and integrated and embodied more of your lessons while that mastery was happening. And I think a good thing to distinguish here is with a generator having that mastery, like, and then that plateau, that stair step learning curve, whereas a manifesting generator, who's a generator type as well, but they'll skip steps. So it looks like they're getting there faster. So a generator might be like, what the heck? Like why haven't I built a business like this? And it's like, oh, they're a manifesting generator. They got there and then, you know, they're going back and fixing what they need to. But a generator, they compare it to like a turtle and a hare, right? And it's like slowly, step by step, generators are going to get there. It's okay. Step by step. You don't have to look around and see the manifestor, manifesting generator, whoever doing things that you wish that you were there already. It's like, just trust yourself. It goes back, a lot of it is like, yeah, trusting yourself. Each step you take, I think that would be my advice, is like step by step, little step at a time. Let things come to you. Let's say you have this big vision, this big goal. That's what I love working with people around. It's like you have this image of how you want this thing to play out. And you think that if you do one thing, you're going to get there. It's like, no, the lessons in it, each step you take is going to build your mastery. And I know from my experience, like even talking on camera 4 years ago, hated it, couldn't do it, like would shake and still get like, you know, sweating and nervous and all that stuff. And it's like step by step, I would just record myself and not post it. I would do all these little steps to build my skills and my mastery. And now I feel comfortable. My nervous system is like, okay, this isn't, you don't have to run away from like a tiger type of deal. It's like, this is comfortable and safe for me. And connecting with people around the world, that didn't feel safe to me. And as a line 5 too, I feel like that fear of being seen. I talk about this a lot too. Like going out into the world, I had a belief that the world wasn't safe. And so putting my work out there into the internet was like the scariest thing. But step by step, I followed what I needed to. I leaned into my gifts as a generator and what I'm excited about, human design. And now look at the community that we have, that we've built together through the summits and just connecting people. Like Diamond, you connected me with a reflector, like, you know, and Bria, you connected me with a manifester. It's just like, we're all here together. So long story short, there's my triple split again. Step by step, everybody, just step by step. Okay, generators. Awesome. What has been the biggest transformation in how you approach your work and relationships after aligning with your design? If you could sum that up.
Just being more empathetic, like that's for me, like more compassion for myself. And then especially with other people, like, especially because in my community, we talk about the transits every week. So even helping other people cultivate like, hey, it may not be them necessarily. It may just be them reacting to the energy that's in our environment right now. And so I would say empathy, just because it creates more understanding and less reaction.
Yeah, I agree. I think that understanding that we're not all the same, that we all operate different. We all have, like, I always picture a puzzle piece, right?
I feel the same. And I love that you talked about the transits, because I use that a lot with working with parents, because they're like, why has my kid lost their crap today all of a sudden? And I'm like, oh, well, guess what? They're being activated emotionally, blah, 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 blah. But, you know, it helps with that. But yeah, it definitely helps with compassion and understanding, like, and that's what I loved about human design, is that it gives this tangible thing that people can see. And like, okay, this person's challenge is different than my challenge. You know, we can say like, okay, we could see someone who had a stressful childhood and another person that had a stressful childhood, and one ended up that appears to be more balanced than the other. And so we assume, well, whatever they did, you should be able to do it too, and pick yourself up by the bootstraps and go. But when we look at these tangible designs, like what we're physically looking at, I'm like, oh, well, your challenge is going to take a little longer because you have a lot of 6 lines. So it's going to be a bit, you know, you're going to have a lot of 6 in yours. Or You know, you learn a lot of more trial and error, and, you know, just the different ways people do that. It's given me a lot more compassion as a homeschool mom who runs a program helping using human design with the kids. Like, watching that has been really interesting. But yeah, it brings a lot more compassion and a lot more sensitivity to how different we are, but also being able to see the gifts in everybody. Because I think so often we focus on the lack and where we are not meeting certain goals or certain expectations of society, and we disregard the uniqueness of each person and how those unique pieces can fit in to be a bigger whole, to where we're honoring each other, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. This was so fun. I hope, you know, just to conclude this for everybody who has tuned in, I hope that you got something, that you've taken something away and it's helped you understand yourself or maybe someone else a little bit better. I want to thank Diamond, Rhea, and Angela so much for being a part of this, taking time out of your day. Did you guys want to do like a little conclusion? How can people connect with you? We'll start with you, Diamond, and then, you know, if people want to follow you or collaborate with you, let's go.
For sure. So the main place is going to be my website, diamonddripconsulting.com. I do a lot of online branding. So you can also just literally Google hashtag Coach Diamond Drip, and there will be a plethora there for you to dive into.
Amazing. Thank you. Rhea, do you want to drop any social media or no?
Yes. So currently I'm mainly active on Instagram. So it's my name, Reahloh. So Reahloh. And I generally love talking to people, anybody who have like all kinds of stories. I've been like talking a lot one-on-one. I mean, it's part of like one of my gigs also. So I'm like trying to like, you know, just absorbing all of this like stories from everybody. I mean, even like today itself, right? I learned so much from all of you guys. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Wonderful. And Angela?
Yes, I use Instagram. It's energetic_parenting. Or you can also find me on our website, which is moonienergetics.com. My husband is a Reiki master and a sound healer, primarily working with husbands or males deconditioning. And then I work with mothers and their children. And so that's where you can find us.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody.